The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklynn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
So today we have a question from Tammy, who writes to us from Roanoke, Virginia. And Tammy writes, I am very angry at the Virginia Supreme Court overturning the redistricting decision made by the people. How is it possible for a group of judges to reject a democratically approved law? The people spoke, and it seems our voices don't matter anymore. I know this question might cause a fight on the podcast. Dr. Brooklynn will see this as a validation of her position the system is being rigged, where Dr. Mark will push back on any such notation. So all I can say is, sorry, Dr. Scott, you'll need to use all your skills to mediate this. Okay, so thank you, Tammy.
So here I go. 1, 2, 3, go.
Well, it's just interesting to me. Thank you, Tammy, for the point. I looked at this, and apparently the justices said there were 4, all of whom were elected during a Republican or nominated or appointed by Republicans. In the majority opinion, it was Arthur Kelsey, Stephen McCullough, Teresa Chafin, and Wesley Russell, and the 4, who all happen to be white, by the way, 3 men and 1 woman, were elected by Republican majority. And the 3 dissenters, Cleo Powell, Thomas Mann, and Junius Fulton. Cleo Powell is a woman, a Black woman. Junius Fulton is a Black man, and Thomas Mann is a white man. And they were appointed when there was either a Democratic or a bipartisan majority in the Commonwealth's legislature. But the 4 were elected when Republicans controlled both chambers in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So they apparently, this was procedural, according to the majority, where the Article 12, Section 1 of the Virginia Constitution was violated because the first vote was too close to the 2025 legislative elections. So some ballots were cast without knowing the officials' positions. And the new map was narrowly approved. It was 51% to 49%. It was nullified because of the process, the constitutional violation. The process was flawed, according to the majority. Now, what of course is interesting is that in Louisiana, the governor, whose name, of course, I still can't remember, took the Supreme Court's decision that electoral maps could be withdrawn or redistricting could happen, and during an election said no, everything has to stop, and even if you've cast your ballot, it doesn't matter. Everything has to, the map has to be redrawn now during an election. So it to me, there is a great deal of political influence, and it doesn't matter whether something is too close to an election or during an election. Even on the Supreme Court, of course, we saw that Amy Coney Barrett was rushed through very close to the presidential election, whereas President Obama's choice of Merrick Garland could not be seated because Mitch McConnell insisted that a year away from a presidential election was too close to an election, whereas Amy Coney Barrett was seated like a month away or 2 months away from a presidential election. So it simply to me it yeah, I mean, I don't know if I would want to call it a rigged, but the justices appear to be very much informed by their own political determinism of who they want to be, who they want to have more seats. And it's typically they want the Republicans to have more seats. So the will of the people doesn't matter. Sorry, I know. Do you want me to repeat all that? I mean,
No.
And try to do it better?
No.
So that, okay,
No.
because that was disjointed. Yes, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm tired. Did any of that make any sense?
Well, it's a position. I'll give it that. First of all, Louisiana and Virginia have nothing to do with each other at all.
Oh no, I understand that.
Let's look at Virginia. Tammy, if you want to be mad at somebody, be mad at your legislator, because they obviously didn't know the damn rules for changing the Virginia Constitution, and it is black letter law. And the fact is, it says it must be approved by the General Assembly in 2 separate legislative sessions, with a general election in between these 2 votes. And when this was presented the first time and was debated in the legislature, voting had already started. Matter of fact, 40% of ballots had already been cast. So the judges looked at this and said, wait a minute, if you've already got 40% of the ballots cast, the election's already been going on while you were having the debate. It's supposed to be one before an election and then one after. That's black letter law. So to the justices that basically, rejected this idea, I would say they were the ones in the wrong, because it's the law. And you just can't say, well, the people voted. Your real anger should be with, as I say, the legislature, who didn't even understand its own constitutional laws. There's where your anger should be sitting, nowhere else. And if you're wondering whether this is going to go before the United States Supreme Court, I'm almost going to guarantee you that is exactly the way the Supreme Court of the United States is going to say, listen, hey guys, this is your rule. You didn't follow it. What's the problem? Go back and do it again. And they have not been stopped from doing it again. But this time, hey, how about we do it the right way? So I don't see this as any rigged or any political partisanship, although I will say I'm rather disappointed in the ones that didn't agree with the voiding of this. And yes, personally, I don't like it. But the fact is that this is black letter law. How could those other justices not agree with this? This is what it says, people. I mean, very rarely when we look at the law, is it this black and white? Your legislators, for whatever reason, in their attempt at expediency, basically violated it, violated the rule. What did you expect? Of course, you're not going to hear that out of your legislator. But if you really look at this, that's exactly what it was. And it's pretty simple. It truly is a simple process. If you want to change the way the elections are being conducted, you want to change this kind of stuff, which is a constitutional change in Virginia, then you have to debate it, get it approved, have an election cycle, and then you can debate it again after that election cycle, and then you can put it on the next ballot. That's not what happened here. So in my mind, I'm always going to say the system held. That's the system. That's the system that you guys came up with. If you don't like the system, hey, change the system, but I'm going to give you some advice. Make sure you debate it first, give some time before a general election is held, and then debate it a second time, and then you can put it onto the ballot. I really don't see, and again, I understand, not very good for Democrats. But here's my thing. I don't know who brought this lawsuit. I'm really not sure. But they were smarter than the people that decided to try to push this through the way to try to push it through, because according to the Virginia Constitution, it was unconstitutional. Simple. Scott doesn't think so.
Well, you may be right. I'm not an expert on Virginia law, and the obviously the Republicans in the House and the state office are the ones who brought the lawsuit. But if you look around, like at least Virginia tried to ask the voters what they wanted, and the voters responded. In Texas, in Ohio, in Florida, in North Carolina, legislatures did not do that. They did not ask the people if they wanted to do that. They simply did it. And in the case of Utah, where one judge was standing in the way, they found a way to get rid of that judge. And in other states, they're simply like Ohio in the last election, ignored the Supreme Court of Ohio until it was too late to do anything about it. And then the Supreme Court said, okay, you can have these seats this time, but in the next election, damn it, you're going to change it. And the Ohio Republicans said, okay, we'll do that. And they went and changed the way the state draws their lines. There's like the shenanigans are already out there, right? It was suggested that all the legislature has to do is say we're changing the retirement age for judges, mandatory retirement age, which is 75, to make it 54. Which is, there's one judge who's 54 years old. The rest of them are all older, and they would all have to retire and could be replaced by the legislature immediately. There's all kinds of stuff that you could pull from a political standpoint that would change this. One thing that's not going to work is going to the U.S. Supreme Court. And it's shocking to me that they would even bother doing that, because the U.S. Supreme Court is certainly going to turn them down. And we happen to live in a time where the courts are partisan. John Roberts can get up there and say that they're nonpartisan all they want, but I'm sorry, the proof is in the pudding. These are partisans. These are partisan courts, and Virginia's got a partisan court, and the U.S. Supreme Court is a partisan court, and it is definitely something that needs to be addressed at some point. The way we appoint judges probably needs to change. The way we, the judicial reform has to be on the ballot for the United States. But, and for this, Virginia could certainly do what everybody else has done and just say, okay, well, you know what? We tried to ask the people, but if you think that we didn't do it right, follow the right procedure, we're just going to go ahead and not ask the people, and we're just going to do what we want to do anyway and try to stop us. And it's worked for the Republicans all over the country. Why wouldn't it work for the Democrats in Virginia?
Well, and Scott, I totally agree. There's been a lot of shenanigans going on in a lot of these red states. There's no doubt about it. But to the listener who is in Virginia, my comment is that this was not part of shenanigans. This was part of what your Constitution in your state says has to happen. And that's just the way it is. Now, my comment would be, okay, well, somebody must have known this was being done wrong. And if there wasn't, once again, go back to your legislators and say, come on, guys, you would think that as the lawmakers of our Commonwealth, you would know what the damn laws are to be able to make changes to this. And obviously somebody thought they were just going to get it through. So, yes, this is different than Texas. This is different than those other states. This is where the court looked at it and said, okay, here's the Constitution of our Commonwealth. It says you have to do this. You didn't do it. Now, if you want to go back and you want to do it again, they didn't. There's nothing in there that said they couldn't do it. In fact, the Justice D. Arthur Kelsey, who wrote the majority opinion, said that the amendment was submitted to the voters in an unprecedented manner, that the procedural violation irreparably undermines the integrity of the resulting referendum vote and renders it null and void. In other words, you didn't follow the damn rules. If you had followed the rules, then we may be having a different conversation. And Tammy, you may then be in your rights to be completely angry at the Supreme Court. But the fact is that, I don't know, they upheld the law as it's written. Do it right.
Although the Virginia Attorney General Jay Jones has filed an emergency application saying that they've misread the law, and that they consider what they're saying is there's something about an election being one day rather than a process that happens over a period of time, and that their reading of the law in the Supreme Court there is faulty, and they need to go and look for another legal pathway to redistricting Virginia. So,
and, it is. And again, in the dissenting opinion, basically, they were calling into question what is a general election. For as how do you define timing requirements when we're talking about election? And a key point, and that was a key point in the dissent. Yeah, okay, but this was pre-voting. All these mail-in ballots. This was pre-voting. This was an election day, and that's what they're going to hang their hat on. And the Supreme Court justice, right or wrong, and yes, they are following a challenge to this. The judges said, okay, we've defined elections as if you've got 40% of the vote already in because you've taken mail-in ballot, and election day is the 5th of November, and it's not the 5th of November. Are those ballots part of the general election? So this could open up an even bigger can of worms when you think about it, is to mail-in voting, which I think everyone here totally supports. So where then does the definition come in to when actual, election day is? Is election day when the first vote is cast that is legally able to be cast as a mail-in vote, which may be 2 months before the actual election day? I don't know. But that could really open a huge can of worms. And for those people that are against mail-in voting, that could be the place where they hang their hat. That, well, maybe that's not valid because it's not happening on election day because we are so strict here on election days, and that would be a shame. That might really be a problem for those who are in support of mail-in balloting, such as I'm sure all three of us are. I think it should always be mail-in. I mean, this idea of going on a Tuesday during a work day, it's stupid. It's just stupid. And the idea of we don't count those ballots until after they're the last. I mean, some states, they're the last votes to be counted. Some states are the first votes to be counted. Some states won't allow them to count those votes before election day. I mean, there's so many different rules because the states each control their own election process. In some ways, maybe this is something, this idea maybe does need to be federalized in a way so that these definitions of when does the election start? What is the definition of when a general election starts? In some states, I know in South Carolina, I believe we can vote 2 months ahead of time. You could put in your absentee ballot 2 months ahead of time. If I'm the first one to put in, mine's the first vote. Has now the general election started? I don't know. Interesting question. We'll see how the We'll see how the challenge plays out. But in this case, Tammy, I'm sorry. It wasn't going to be as big an argument as you thought it was going to be, because the bottom line is that they did follow the rule. Now, did they interpret the rule wrong? Well, I guess we'll see that down the road.
Yeah, so thank you for the question, Tammy. It is interesting, and I may very well be incorrect. It looks as though, given Mark's argument and reading of the law, and he studied law at university and I have not, then I would be incorrect. I did not read the law.
My role as mediator here means that you can't just concede like that. You have to keep fighting.
Well, I haven't read the law
Mark,
or the
Mark, you
the dissenting or the dissenting opinions or the majority opinions. But I mean, the law would appear to be clear. However, if there's a question of when the general election begins,
I mean, I'm not even sure that this really counts as a constitutional challenge to the Virginia Constitution. Hold on a second here. Or whether this is if redistricting falls in that category or not. I mean, all these states seem to be doing exactly what their dominant political party wants to do. I don't know why Virginia can't do what they want to do. If the dominant political party there is the Democrats, they have both houses and the governor, then they should be able to do what they want to do based on the idea that the Republicans are doing the same thing in Texas and Florida and all these other states. Why is Virginia different?
Well, Virginia's always been different, but anyway. I mean, the one thing I will say about this is, and I've made this point before, this brings up some very interesting questions. Brings up some very interesting questions, and unfortunately, it could lead to even more concern about the voting process, and which is something we definitely don't need here in the United States. We don't need any more challenges. I think our voting is very secure. I think that, yes, as Scott points out, the shenanigans that go on inside of states is reprehensible. That's where the reform probably needs to happen. If the Supreme Court of Virginia read this wrong, now their comment was very, very simple. The first vote to the amendment, and again, it was an amendment, occurred after early voting had already begun. They considered that, all right, you can't vote on this in your legislature, in your General Assembly, before or after voting has started, and 40% of ballots had already been cast. Did voting already start? And the answer would be, in my mind, yeah, it has started. But do we define that as? What do we define it as? And I think that's something that those people that really do hate the idea of mail-in ballots, that hate the idea of a more 21st century approach to voting, those are the things they're going to hang their hat on.
Yeah.
So this may have bigger ramifications beyond Virginia.
We always knew what a first down was in football, what a catch was, until they started reviewing these plays on instant replay. And now all of a sudden you have to review all these things. We're seeing the same thing in baseball now. And it is the more you scrutinize things, the more you realize how little you know.
Absolutely.
And whether you catch the ball and make a football move, or you redistrict a state because you have the power to do it, these are philosophical questions that will vex the minds of many. But the fact is that the powerful will do what they want, and the non-powerful will suffer as they must, and let the chips fall where they may. Virginia needs to just go ahead and redistrict. And here's the last thing I'll say about this: voters, if you don't like it, go out and vote. All right.
Absolutely.
You know what? They can redistrict Memphis, and Memphis could end up with 3 black legislators instead of just one that they had before, because if everybody in Memphis goes out and votes, then those rural areas that make up the rest of the of the gerrymandered districts won't have a say in this thing. Just get out and vote. If you live in a place where you're, and here's another thing, have good candidates.
Yes.
Get good candidates, okay? We've watched the Republican clown car show for years and wondered how they end up with these candidates. How you end up with a Herschel Walker running for U.S. Senate. How you end up with that witch lady who ran for Congress somewhere in I don't know where that was. How you end up with, remember that one? The guy in Indiana who said that rape wasn't a real thing and women could reject a man's sperm if they really want to after they've been raped, and so that rape isn't real, or that back in the old days, if a woman didn't want to get raped, she just held a quarter between her knees, that kind of thing, like all kinds of idiotic statements like that. Hopefully the Democrats have good candidates that they could put up, and hopefully the Republicans could have good candidates that they could put up, so that we don't have these kind of clown shows anymore, and that really you should have a group of really good candidates and choose the best of the best, and that would really solve all these problems.
Absolutely. No more George Santoses.
Right.
No, no more.
My younger brother says he's proud that he voted for him and would vote for him again. He's in that.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't say that. No way. I can't believe that. I cannot believe.
He proudly served his district, and he's happy with his performance, and he wishes he was still there.
Oh my gosh, no. I can't believe a Gershworth thinks that way. I really can't. But yeah, Scott makes
unlike Brooke, he doesn't give up easy. So
okay, well, there you go. I mean, but the fact is that you're right, Scott. Get out there and vote. None of these rules, none of the shenanigans, as Scott puts it, matter if you get out and vote. You have the numbers. I think 2 or 3 podcasts ago, 55 million people are registered Democrats. Only 35 million people are registered, or 37 million people are registered Republicans. You have the vote, but you got to go out and do it. You got to go out and you've got to exercise that and stop whining about it. And I understand what you're saying, Tammy. Gee, we went out and voted. Yeah, okay, fine. But
that was your first mistake, Tammy.
Yeah,
calling for that vote when you could just do what you want to do. I get it. It seems like a more democratic process when you actually ask the voters if they want to do this thing. But you know what? The voters voted for the legislatures that they have, and the legislature should decide that. Go ahead and redistrict Virginia and everywhere else, New York and anywhere else you want to redistrict, and let's make this where the Republican and the Democratic Party have to strip to the waist and fight to the death for it. Seems about where we are right now.
We're pretty close.
Yeah, well, just go back to your oh my God, go back to the legislature.
Those guys.
Tammy, and raise the point and say, look, we've got this thing, and now we're going back to court apparently, and can't we just redistrict without wasting all this time?
Absolutely.
Like Texas and all these other folks. Isn't Florida redistricting?
Yeah, and they didn't ask anybody. DeSantis just says, hey, we're redistricting, and they're doing it. Come on, Spanberger. Do something with your power.
Yeah, so, no, New York also has voter redistricting. So I don't know what Kathy Hochul's going to do. We'll see.
Hey, speaking of Kathy Hochul, how about this? Zohran Mamdani closed a $12 billion deficit in New York City's budget.
Oh, good for him.
With the help of $8 billion from Kathy Hochul. But what a tremendous achievement. Mamdani has made it happen in New York City. And all these guys who were out there screaming about socialism and stuff like that. This guy is a very, very astute politician.
Well, good. I'm glad somebody did something for New York.
And you know what makes him an astute politician is he works differently than normal politicians. He works with people. And we are so desperate for that. We used to have that. I mean, we've said here so many times, Republicans and Democrats would always disagree on how to fix a problem. But they could always agree that the problem existed, and then they would make compromise because they always knew it was not a zero-sum type of attitude. You couldn't always have it your own way, and you had to give a little to get a little. And we have gotten so far away from that it's made politics in the United States almost unmanageable, and it's unfortunate. So anyway, hopefully we answered that for you.
Yeah, I hope so. So we will see you next week.
Absolutely.
See ya.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklynn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!